terminology of what green buildings are through rating systems. And we've got this kind of, I'd say, still niche market of green buildings. We believe it's time to take the next step. We believe it's time to step into the shoes of investors and understand things from their perspectives. There's no point writing technical pieces from subject matter experts that don't really speak from an investment point of view. We also believe that we need to step into the shoes of tenants, of the demand side. We need to really understand how and what type of information tenants need so that the CFO can make a different decision based on productivity benefits or whatever the benefit is that they receive. So it's really about, for us, taking the next step and making sure that as a movement we can really scale up our impact.
You have a commitment, obviously, to development of a green construction industry nationwide and globally. A lot of people here will be very sympathetic. If the report had demonstrated the opposite, that there wasn't a business case, would you have published it?
Definitely. I mean, our motto as Green Building Councils is that once green building becomes mainstream, and we think it will, that we'll put ourselves out of business. If there's no role for Green Building Councils, if there's no business case, we won't exist. So when green building does become mainstream, which one day, we will, we won't be there. We won't need to be there.
Ursula, putting on your surveyor's hat, as it were, the valuation question, because clearly that plays a critical part, as Miles outlined, it plays a critical part in whether or not people are going to say, yes, I like it, or I don't like it. Valuations are in the eye of two beholders, the seller and the purchaser, essentially. Why is there such a mismatch between what the report suggests ought to be the valuation and what is the popular valuation of buildings that they just see in the street and say, shall I buy it or shan't I buy it?
Well, I think it's mainly due to how traditionally valuations are being carried out. You're taking a back mirror view. So you're looking at evidence from the past, and also it's not so much future orientated. So there needs to be a rethinking on the part of the valuation profession to take the risks that Miles clearly outlined into account, into a more kind of a risk assessment due diligence exercise. Because also I think we need to look at the landscape of in which the values actually operate. Until 2007, 2008, it was a very kind of short-termism, short-cyclic characterized market, whereby these matters long-term, I mean sustainability in its essence is a long-term issue and a long-term kind of vision. So if you're thinking in short-term cycles, why should you care? The name of the game has slightly changed since the crash. So a lot of investors are looking from a 3 to 5 year holding period more to a 10-15 year holding period. Basically because they're forced by the market.
Are you saying that developers who, in the picture that you portrayed, which everyone will be familiar with, for instance in London, a building shoots up, it stays up for a few years, it then comes down, and
it just changes hands.
Sorry?
It just changes hands.
Or changes,
it just gets sold or rented.
Or it goes up or down, and someone says, well, I can take more money out and put in something different up more cheaply. You're saying that culture has shifted since 2007-8?
Yes, that's definitely shifted. Because I think that a lot more investors, people can't shift properties as quickly. And I think therefore the long-term investment value comes much more, that's obviously something that Miles will also be talking about, comes much more into the fore. And that, I think, sort of changes the role of the value as an information manager, as an advisor. And it also changes, I think, because the valuer will say, well, where's the evidence? And I hope that with this report, we've provided, more evidence for valuers that they can draw upon. I mean, this is very high level, we need it at a local, practical level as well. But what I'm hoping is that we've demonstrated that it's not just the monetary value. Like Miles was talking about, that for every stakeholder, there is a different value set. If I'm a law firm, then energy cost may not be of such an issue to me. And the environmental performance may not be either, but by having a healthy green building, I may attract higher levels of human capital, staff retention may be better. Also, you have fewer days of absenteeism due to sick building syndromes and things like that. And I think this is something that maybe, the valuation profession has not traditionally been looking at. But I'm pleased to say that over the last 10 years, the mindset has really changed. And we, as an organisation, RICS has provided our values with guidance. We're getting involved in a lot of research programs such as these to make a more compelling business case.
Staffan, you wanted to come in. I've got a question for you if you don't answer it before I ask it.
Yes, please. I just wanted to comment about the developers. Some of them don't have a very good reputation just because they are developing cheap buildings and divest them and make money. We don't think that's a good idea because we are very long term on the markets we are. So we have a decision that we go always for a certified building when we develop office buildings. And it's on the highest levels of the LEED or BREEAM system. So we think it's the opposite way around is the best business for both us and our customers.
How well set up obviously it varies from country to country and region to region. The regulations are different. In China, you can say we're going to have a green city, boom, up it goes, as it were, while at the same time you're building coal power stations. In this country, in the United Kingdom, how well set up is the construction industry to deliver buildings that are competitively priced, that are green rather than energy wasting?
I would say they are very well equipped in UK. And so construction industry is on most markets. However, we have to do this in a proper way. We have to put green on the agenda from day one. From the purchase of the building right, from the first meeting with the architect, and throughout all consultants, construction period and commissioning. If we don't do that, we probably end up with a not very sustainable building, but also at a cost premium that we don't like at all. I would also say that choosing like-minded partners, like you and we, that know that this is the right thing to do, that is key to getting an attractive price for the building. So choose your contractor, your architect and your consultant with care. They make a big difference.
Miles down at Grosvenor is a very big property owner, manager, etc. And you're Mr. Sustainability there. How much does the debate about the changing perceptions of green play into the decisions that Grosvenor makes?
I think as dropped on the main point, which is the valuers look to the evidence. And if the evidence isn't there of a difference between tenants or occupiers putting forward a higher bid for a green building, then the valuers will value what they see. I think that evidence isn't there of that differential yet because we're preaching to the converted. The occupier, the man in the street who takes the lease, takes the space, they don't see the benefits. They take a much more short-term view. So they take a short-term view from the leasing we do in all the 19 cities around the world that we get involved in. They take a short-term view on what is their cost day one. There might be some upside for operating costs being a bit lower down the line, but that won't drive a decision. But also they take a short-term view because they're taking shorter leases. If they sign up to something which has a higher cost commitment for them, they're not going to see the return. So the occupiers aren't giving the valuers the evidence. If the valuers get the evidence, then the developers will see the upside for going that bit further.
So, when you're making decisions, or when Grosvenor is making decisions, you're not all, I presume, green saints, as it were. Do you find yourself saying, come on guys, whatever that phrase is about the coffee smelling, wake up and smell the coffee? Or are they all there, I was going to say whiter than white, greener than green, following you down this road?
The debate we're having now, and the debate on whether the evidence is there or not, is the debate we have at a broad level every time something comes up. And those of us that believe it, get it, see that it's the right thing, have to convince people around us in our own organisation. That will be so much easier with this kind of insight and this kind of detail. But we need the occupiers to get it and come with us and drive us there and drive us to make different decisions.
Miles, in your presentation, unless I missed it, you talked about risk and the risk factor. When you've got a changing environment all the time and then you've got a changing regulatory framework, how important is it, or at least is it the case that you can convince people that going green is going to be a safe bet as opposed to a risky bet?
Yeah, I think it will probably depend geographically where you're operating, but certainly if we think of the UK as a case study, the direction of travel on green policy and green regulation is fairly clear. Now there are some, it's a bumpy ride along the way, and I know you've spoken to some ministers here, some of whom are less convincing than others.
I got severely rebuked, but unconvincingly, by a minister for suggesting that for some ministers, green was an add-on rather than a necessary condition.
Well, it's a shame that you were rebuked. You oughtn't to have been.
Yeah, that's what I felt and said. Anyway, that's by the by.
But if you have a look at the UK market, you can see what the direction of travel is as far as policy is concerned. And at the top of the tree, if you like, in terms of policy thinking, we've got really, really difficult to meet carbon objectives, legally binding carbon objectives from a policy perspective. If we're going to get anywhere close to achieving those, there's going to have to be a regulatory framework which enables the market to achieve that. I say enables or forces the market to achieve that. There are some people in the marketplace from the investment community who see this absolutely and are right now and have been for some time making changes to the way they operate in order to make sure that their buildings are future-proof against regulatory change.
So this just one last thing. So I hope everyone who wants to make points, and there's 3 women with white coats somewhere or other. Yes, there they are. Got hands up. They will come to you when you put your hand up in just one second. Does what you're saying apply? We've talked more implicitly. We talked about new buildings going up. Does it apply what you're saying to retrofit as well? And if you've got an older building that you need, that if you green it, the same arguments apply? There is a business case?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a more pressing concern, actually.
It's a much higher proportion of the building stock.
Absolutely. And it's arguably more difficult to deal with existing buildings because they are what they are, and it's difficult to change them. Whereas if you're starting from scratch, as Stefan was suggesting, you can start with that leadership program at the early stage of the inception of the building, and you can produce something which is greener. With existing buildings, it's a lot harder. But in regulatory terms, again, in a lot of jurisdictions, including the UK, this is where the focus is actually. And there's one sort of argument or phrase is that new buildings will look after themselves. I don't actually buy that, because we need to have a weather eye on where regulations are going and standards are going as far as new buildings are concerned. But actually the real focus needs to be on the existing stock. And yes, there is a business case for this, and certainly as far as de-risking standing portfolios of existing assets, that's where some of the really interesting and innovative work is going on at the moment with the large investors, some of the large property companies, who are really dealing with this issue in innovative ways, because they know it makes business sense. It's just too risky not to do it.
The business case resides in part on the regulatory framework that there is in one jurisdiction or another. Jane, in your case, in order to drive forward what you would like to see, would you like to see I don't want to use a normative term, but I was going to say harsher, but a stronger regulatory framework than there currently is, or do you want the market to be the principal driver?
Around the world?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah, well, one of the conversations we've had on the steering committee is, can you transfer the experience of, say, the UK and the case that's being put forward here, can you transfer that into less mature markets? In some ways, can't. It really depends on that base level of the building code and what aspiration there is to move above that. So our view at the moment is that there needs to be a combination of the regulation coming up from the bottom and leadership from the top. So it can't be either or, and so there has to be that connection. And that's how we see our role, is enabling that leadership and that pull. And we do work closely with governments to show them the kind of macroeconomic benefits at that sort of building code level in different countries.
Some thoughts. I'm going to go to a sort of fresh person, because you had a say earlier, sir. So the third row back at the mic.